Great day, everyone. Once again, welcome back to our course on school systems analysis or systems analysis in educational management. I am your instructor, Sir Ivan Brian L. Indactivo, and this is our second lecture, part of our Module 2 on approaches to systems analysis. The objective of this lecture is to allow you to generate knowledge and skills on the different theories or simply the system theory itself and the different approaches used in systems analysis. I hope this also allows you to understand and eventually aid you in explaining how you could utilize the systems theory in analyzing a certain organization or institution. And lastly, expound on the certain relationships among the elements or basic elements of the organization. So the coverage of our discussion will involve these three areas: the systems theory or the system theory, the different systems model, and the systems perspective or view. We start with the systems theory. Systems theory actually originated as early as the 19th century through the works of an English sociologist and philosopher, Sir Herbert Spencer, as well as evidence in the works of the French social scientist Emily Durkheim. In their discussion, they were building up what we call a social systems theory, which in social science, this deals with the study of society as a complex arrangement of elements, including individuals and their culture, their beliefs, and how this relate to the entire whole. Said for example, here will be a country or a certain organization or the government or other corporate institutions that will look into how we have this holistic perspective. The system theory tries to inculcate or posit the perspective that an organization should have a holistic view of the intention, the purpose of the organization, as well as the interrelation of its parts. Now, in this, how this system theory eventually apply to what we have as the systems model and view, the analysis and approaches to the systems. So in the systems model, you need to understand that we need to first and foremost dig deeper on how we understand the model itself, its analysis, and the different approaches here, or how we really approach the system, and how this is formulated later on to a framework or a design. In the basic systems model, again, I discussed this in the previous lecture. You get familiar with the elements here, that the basic or the core attributes or components of a systems model will include the input, the process, and the output, as well as the potential feedback, whether a feedback loop towards the input or directly influencing the process itself. So you'll see here, as adapted in the study or in the paper of Lunenburg 1991, page 18. Lunenburg showed the framework on basic systems model. Again, this is a basic system model, which means the input, process, output, and the feedback loop is embedded within the organization. And the organization is situated in a bigger perspective, which influenced by the environment. So this is the entire system, whether a supra, a subsystem, or simply a system in itself per se. In the systems approach, we need to understand that you are looking at the model and you are conditioning your mind on an understanding that a certain system should be approached in terms of its component, in terms of its design, in terms of how the functions work together like cogwheels functioning into one entire system. So how each of these components work together in order to achieve a certain goal, or simply the telos or end of the system. So when you say systems approach, this is a paradigm, a way of thinking that this entire system is a holistic system. And we wanted to understand that when we approach a certain system, you are looking at it not as a piecemeal, but instead as an integral whole. Okay? So you look at here, this is an example of a suprasystem wherein there are different theory employed as well. And the complexity here lies on the recognition that every organization or institution might be influenced by different theories, approaches, and models. In this case, you'll see here the emergence of overscale of, let's say, an organization that you might consider in the entire organizational structure and development, the collective behavior. For example, it's their social dynamics, the organizational collective intelligence, the herd mentality, or even the swarm behavior if there are mass beliefs or mass culture, as well as, let's say, the criticality or sociality within that institution. You also need to recognize, let's say here, pattern formation. When you say pattern formation here, you'll notice that there are considerations on spatial ecology, spatial evolutionary biology, spatial fractals, reaction diffusion system, partial differential equations. These are all on the algorithmic side, okay, within the information structure. So aside from that, you need also to look into networks in terms of how one system, one community, or one social network are interrelating to each other. So the dynamic network here, how resilient and how adaptive as well, and how this is organized or maintained or even regulated in terms of centrality, hierarchy, and diffusion. Okay? So all of these are actually examples of different consideration in a system. But we need to understand that our focus here is on the systems theory here. When we say systems theory, you will see the lower part here, lower left side, that there are consideration in terms of feedbacks, the overall performance goal of the system dynamics or the interrelation of the components, homeostasis, which means balance, the interplay of the factors in harmonizing and maintaining balance. As I have said, system stability is relevant. Also the complexity and information structure. So all of these are, again, part of the complexity of a system. And I'm not saying that all system includes all of these components. It depends on the nature of the system that we're talking about. Now, when we talk about the nature, again, within that system, we discussed previously about the diagram or the SIPOC process or framework. This diagram shows how all of those components come into play in the implementation and structure of a system, the entire design of a system. That it involves, of course, the supplier, inputs, process, output, customers, and other regulatory, statutory requirements that are of course, considered in the implementation of this entire design. And within the process, of course, there are procedures, the steps that we talk about. So here's an example of a SIPOC diagram, considering a fictitious car dealer, manufacturer or dealer. So if you are a car dealer, of course, the first component here will be the suppliers. So when you say a car dealer, you need, of course, a manufacturer, suppliers of parts, of course, the gas station, contact gas station, um, detailing suppliers, and other stakeholders that are relevant in your manufacturing or in your dealership rather. So aside from the suppliers, the next component here will be inputs. Of course, as a car dealer, you need to have the resources, as I have said. The resources that the manufacturers will produce will be the cars. The suppliers, of course, the parts or the packages. The gas station, the fuel for the cars. The car wash, car washes, and so on. And if you're going to look at the process, this is already the detailed procedure or operation in the car dealership. How you're going to process or transform the inputs generated, supplied by the suppliers in order to transform it into the desired output. So in this case, the first step or part of the procedure will be clientele interaction. Next will be the situational analysis and understanding the needs of your client in terms of the cars. And then generating the solution, the options, and even testing the car itself. And finally, second to the last, of course, is to generate that kind of understanding or agreement and the options and prices and delivery logistics. And finally, to close the deal and to seal the deal, signing of paperwork and handing over the car to the client. So the output here will be, of course, not just the car itself, not just the paperwork, but you need to look into how all of this process come into play as you generate the output on each of the process or the steps or even the procedure. For example, in coming to agreement, the price and option, and before you deliver, of course, you need the payment. You need to generate the contract, which means these are all parts of the output. The continuous service delivery or notification, and the other paperworks, and of course the account from the client. The client itself serves as the customer, the buyer of the car. The later on, as a word of mouth, other clients, the service department, the dealership owners, and the department of motor vehicles. And part of this will be a consideration on the requirements as well. So this is an example of a CPOC or SIPOC diagram, which involves the entire design on how a system works and how these stakeholders from the suppliers the up to the customers interplay in the entire system. Okay. Next will be our last discussion on the systems view. In the systems view, you'll see here an example of a school system. I'll try to explain to you the parts here. The big picture part here will be the environment, the external environment. And then within that external environment is embedded the input, process, output factors or elements. In the input, this is a very basic school system administrative view. In the input, you will see here that you need to consider suppliers or inputs, of course, the key personnel, uh, finances, the policies that we have, the theory and knowledge, mandatory, statutory, regulatory, um, laws, regulations, mandates, and requirements. Okay? Even the local government, the stakeholders, external stakeholders, and even other interested parties are part of that input. Now, in the transformation process or in the process itself, you will understand that it is not just the learning delivery itself, but the internal environment from the curriculum design, the teaching pedagogies, the innovations, the intervention, the communication, the changes that had been implemented, and even the quality of leadership the school had manifests or practices in the school is part of the transformation process. Overall, the organizational development structure, the quality and structural management implementation, these are all part of that transformation process. But of course, the key and the heart or the core of the school system administration transformation process will be the curriculum implementation or the instruction itself. And lastly, in the part of the output, of course, in terms of learning delivery, part of the output and the most vital output will be learning achievement or student achievement, learning outcomes. This might also include performance measures of key personnel, teacher performances, um, standards raised, performance measure in terms of school indicators, school key performance indicators such as completion rate, dropout, repetition, school leavers, or even the positive key performance indicators such as we call this the learning outcomes achievement, the cohort survival, the graduation rate. All of these key performance indicators of the school are part of the output. Even to the point of employee engagement, client interaction and satisfaction, or even dissatisfaction, employee satisfaction, or even the benefits received. All of these are part of the output. From the administrative side to the curricular delivery side, these are all part of the output, the measures or the indicators, whether we are achieving our goal or performing our task. So, these are very relative, of course, to the process that are uh, included in the system, and at the same time, the input that you have laid down at the beginning. Okay. Now, let's look at another example in the educational management system of a small primary school. This is another perspective on how you look into the design of a system. The input here will involve both the supplier and of course the input that we're talking about. But if you're going to demarcate here, administrators, teachers, parents, and community are and students, of course, are part of the input. And curriculum, budgeting, media and technology, and learning sources will be part. I repeat that discussion. Administrators, teachers, parents, and community, as well as the students, are part of the suppliers. And the curriculum, budgeting, media, technology, and learning resources are part of the actual input or the resource itself, including the policy, memoranda, and the learning materials as well. In the process side, you'll see here that the process involves the PDCA cycle. or the Plan, Do, Check Act. And the Plan, Do, Check Act will comprise, of course, the school's vision, mission, and mandate in terms of academic delivery and administration, financial, fiscal, or budgeting administration, human resource or personal administration, and general services administration. In the case of a school public elementary or public secondary system, the process part here will involve strategic leadership and management as the first part. The second will consist of curriculum implementation and curriculum delivery. The third will pertain to resource management, whether physical, financial, or structural resource. And then the fourth part will involve the human resource management, from the personnel selection, performance management, learning and delivery, learning and development, up to promotion, retention, retirement, rewards, and recognition. And the last part in the process will be the partnership and linkages and networking. Okay? Then the last here will be the output. The output will be the school effectiveness, the educational management quality, the quality of the learning delivery, okay, in terms of access, in terms of efficiency, in terms of governance, and of course, the most important part, in terms of quality. And this will again undergo a review, a monitoring, an evaluation, an adjustment, a feedback mechanism, and the reports will be subjected again within this process. Whether you will include a review or a modification or an improvement in the input part or in the supplier part, or directly influencing the process part until you generate the desired output. Okay? So that is an example of a systems view of a school involving the input process output, or the CPOC diagram that we had. And I hope this brief approaches to systems analysis again will aid you and help you understand that the system theory that we anchor our systems analysis here is a societal or a social systems theory. Then the model here will involve, of course, the models in terms of the input process output, the complex system organizations, and the CPOC diagram that we have. And in the systems view, I hope you see an example of how a school operates with regards to the different components of the school system. So that's it for our second lecture on approaches to systems analysis. And I hope we were able to achieve the objectives we set at the onset of this module. Good day, everyone, and God bless.